Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the latest news on our glorious post-Brexit export figures for food and drink this time. Unfortunately, they are anything but glorious as Brexit continues to bite the hand that feeds it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we've got the third quarter results in for Brexit year zero now, and reports that show UK food and drink exports to the EU sunk by nearly a quarter since Brexit took effect. That is apparently £2.5 billion in lost sales from this sector of our economy alone, compared to the same period pre-COVID, not last year, pre-COVID. There was also a warning that the downturn could be here to stay. I mean, imagine that. You raise trade barriers and apparently it can reduce the level of trade. And not just temporarily, but for as long as those barriers remain. Who would have seen that coming? But Phil, you said that was compared with pre-COVID levels. Yes, and I know what you're going with here. Obviously, this is COVID, not Brexit, you see. See, we've had that before, though. We've seen from other economic data that the EU has almost completely recovered this year from the economic impacts of COVID, in terms of international trade anyway. It's the UK that hasn't. You remember the chart? Then the other chart that shows that inside the UK, Northern Ireland, that bit that retained access to the single market for goods, has almost completely recovered as well. It's the bits that left the single market, the bits of Europe that left the single market that are looming behind. So EU countries also impacted by COVID, because they also refused to take zero COVID approach of several Pacific nations, have nonetheless got their trade bouncing back. Only the UK, and really, only Britain, is still struggling to get back to a recovery level. The theory explains it, and the results back the theory. We have made it more difficult to sell our goods in the EU. We have not made it easier to just switch selling those goods to other countries around the world, which would be always skating uphill anyway, because they are further away and they have their own complex procedures for accepting imports. The government will point to the fact that rest of world trade is up a bit on pre-Brexit levels. Of course it is. The trade barriers that we have raised with the EU are so unnecessarily high that it is sometimes more profitable to sell goods 5,000 miles away than 500. But those companies are still making less profit by doing so because of the extra costs of transport and import taxes that never used to apply when trading with their own large single market. This is why overall trade remains well down, and it will always remain well down because those barriers remain in place. You can see the quotes on the Federation of Food and Drink press release. The head of international trade talked about the need to improve our deal with the EU. He wasn't banging on about how his members needed to do better in selling to Mongolia, or how they just need to sit tight for the worthless trade deals with countries whole oceans away to come online. By the way, the Australian trade deal has now been signed, I hear. These things are fine in themselves, unless you're a British farmer, in which case they're absolutely curtains. But there is not future prosperity for his industry without being able to trade easily with immediate neighbours. Especially for food and drink, for goodness sake. It's not even always about the distance that these goods have to travel to be sold elsewhere. Tastes around the world often mean that food from the UK will be seen as an exotic product that you might have now and then. It's not going to become part of their staple diet, as it would food from your own continent. We also have to compete with other producers closer to that target country who will have fewer overheads, closer trading ties. And they don't have to ship it 5,000 or 10,000 miles away. The whole concept doesn't get any more, any less insane, I should say. The more I talk about it, it gets more and more. More and more actual data comes out exposing the damage of Brexit, gets more maddening to talk about it. So that being said, take a look at some of the other things emerging from this third quarter survey from the Food and Drink Federation. They said that net business confidence had fallen by 55% in quarter three to minus 51% confidence. So in Q3, the outlook became more pessimistic. That's what they're saying. Another way of saying that is that after half a year of so-called teething problems with Brexit and the government doing terribly well advising businesses how to manage, food and drink businesses became less confident about things in the third quarter as compared to when Brexit chaos was new, raging in the first half of the year. I mean, that sounds to me like things are getting worse, not better. The reason you won't need a crystal ball to discern is because of labour shortages and problems with supply chains. I mean, labour shortages are almost everywhere. The other day when the Prime Minister was trying to distract a journalist, he talked about the building that was going. Why don't you talk about all the building going on around the country? What building? Not only is the promised investment not actually there, but they have labour shortages as well. To say nothing of shortage of building materials. I know this because my partner works in the industry. But there are plenty of reports anyway. As for the supply chain, we strangled that with our extreme Tory Brexit. But not just Brexit, apparently. That wasn't restrictive enough for our businesses. No, only the best for our businesses. Because we have yet again made a proper arse of dealing with the latest COVID variant. France has once again tightened its borders with us. It's not shut them down completely, as will be reported in GB News, but it has severely restricted them. Just like last December. And for exactly the same reason. The survey said that respondents expected even less business confidence in quarter four. That's now. That will have not even been based on the notion that we'd be stupid enough to end up with even more restricted access to our largest port for the second year in a row. Seriously, these Tory MPs who are willing to give Boris Johnson more time to learn lessons and improve need therapy. He doesn't learn lessons. The déjà vu with which we are heading into this winter is ample evidence of that. But the point is that there's a large trade in food and drink at this time of year. Brexit hasn't improved in 2021 as it marched merrily on. In fact, it got worse. And now we have restricted access to the EU via France. If confidence tanked in the industry during Q3 and was expected to do in Q4 anyway, I shudder to think what they're actually thinking right now. And bear in mind that trade isn't steady throughout the year. This is by far and away the busiest time of year for trade. Sky high in the run up to the festive period, in terms of demand anyway, but we're struggling with supply. I mean, I get a very clear view running a YouTube channel because my, ad rate is based on demand for the ads, and that always coincides. High demand coincides with lots of trade going on, lots of people needing to advertise, and so on. This is my AdSense chart from last year, 2020. It's a similar pattern this year, but that's not complete yet. We don't have December. At the start of the year, you tickle along, but you make, most of the revenue towards the end. It's like you could almost go into hibernation at the start of the year. It won't make much difference. If your ability to trade is restricted at this crucial time of the year, the impact is devastating out of all proportion to the period of time where you're affected. Back to the survey. Almost all businesses were saying that they suffer delays with transport. This causes problems for reliable delivery in the just-in-time supply chain. I discussed this even last year and throughout this year. Basically, we're out of that supply chain because it takes too long to deliver now, and the delivery is unreliable. Where an EU-based business has another option for a supplier, it of course will take that other supplier now. Even inside the UK, in Northern Ireland, businesses have been reorganising their supply chains to switch suppliers. People frequently tell me of products increasingly being produced in the EU, in Northern Irish shops now, where it would have been from Britain before this year. These businesses are expecting prices to keep rising as well. We're already been told that inflation is 5%. That's in the news now, 5%. That means that would have been, if you've got what would be considered decent pay rises in previous years, and now effective pay cuts if it's less than 5%. It's really this simple. If you're an average consumer and you aren't earning at least 5% more now than this time last year, you are worse off. And unless it's significantly more than 5%, if it's just a little bit above 5%, you're still going to be worse off in the next few months because the prices still go up. The cost of fuel still going up. Filled my car up the other day, the most I've ever spent on filling up the car. The cost of energy is going up. The cost of food is still going up. And consider the impact on the food and drink sector. Their goods are more expensive overseas. So fewer people will buy them as they choose cheaper produce from countries whose governments didn't knacker them by imposing trade barriers for which there was no preparation during a global crisis. But even domestically, EU imports are cheaper than their British equivalents in many cases. So people strapped for cash with below inflation income risers will go for those. Absolutely devastating for the British food and drink sector. And the same effects are being felt across so many parts of our economy. And there we are. Absolutely maddening. And it will just get worse for that sector. It's happening with every other sector. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the page and link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.